Hello and good evening and welcome to the Outdoor Station, and tonight we're chatting with our European correspondent Roman Ackl, based over in Munich, following his visit to the Summer Outdoor Trade Fair at ISPO. Roman has always been very keen to check out any of the new inspiring products, or in particular lightweight hiking products, but products in general that may be of interest to all outdoors people. So we're going to join Roman to find out exactly what impression the fair left on him this year.
Hi, good evening, Bob.
So you had an interesting experience this year, obviously visiting ISPO for the first time for the outdoors fair. What was your actual impression of it?
Well, quite a lot changed, but a lot of the things also stayed the same. I mean, you know, ISPO obviously is in Munich, and you know, which is quite a difference to the fair, which previously took fair for 25 years at Friedrichshafen. So there was a lot of uncertainty last year in Friedrichshafen, and you know, people were looking forward to how it's like in Munich. So if you look at the general setup of the halls, you know, that kind of remains the same. You have you know, Scandinavian village and different areas for footwear and for tents and so on. That is very similar, but within the halls, you know, a lot of that moved inside, which was outside in Friedrichshafen. So they had an indoor pool where they did some stuff, you know, showing activities. They also had a beer garden. Of course, you need to have that if you are in Munich, where people could eat and drink. And then they had food trucks in the halls where you could eat and grab some snacks. Also, you know, in each and every hall there were some shows where they showed fashion. One of the differences was, you know, you see here one of the booths from Mammut, which had a gigantic booth in Friedrichshafen. The booths were much smaller in Munich, also for the big brands. So that is a change compared to there. And of course, you know, those booths are, I imagine, much more expensive than they were in Friedrichshafen as well, which would explain it. Sustainability remains a subject in terms of content. We have seen that since a lot of shows, and it continues to be a subject. Interestingly, in the previous years, lightweight was always on the forefront, and obviously my main aim was to go there, look around and see you know, what I could find in terms of lightweight equipment. It seems to be that at least for the majority of the major brands, you know, they are continue to use lightweight raw materials, so it's more of ingrained in their current collection, and it's not so much a differentiator anymore for them. It seems to be. Yeah. I think that kind of wraps it up.
Okay, I mean that's fairly interesting. So really, they're continuing following the lightweight as an approach to things, but it's veering off and going much more on the sustainability side now, which is obviously the natural and way to progress things. Certainly. Was the atmosphere good from the trade itself? Did everybody seem sort of happy with the numbers, and you know, did it have a good following?
In general, I would say yes. You know, I was there on a Sunday. It was quite empty, to be honest, in the halls compared to Friedrichshafen. So people were looking that, you know, in terms of visitors, picks up. But maybe we come to that later, where I can talk about a little bit. Is such an exhibition or such a fair really the future format where people come together? Maybe, you know, with social media and everything else, we need to find a different form in the future.
Okay, well, let's not dwell on that too much then, and move forward actually to cover some of the equipment, which is the purpose of this video. Obviously, you want to talk about the big three. So what were your major impressions, and what sort of caught your eye?
Well, I think the first one which caught my eye was the new Anaris tent from Hilleberg. You know, first tent from Hilleberg that sets up with tracking poles. They haven't had that before. It's a 2-person tent, you know, 1.4 kilograms pack weight. It's in a classic A-frame construction, so really back to the roots. I found it interesting, that after a lot of years where they only produced bomber expedition-like type of tents, in the previous years they kind of embraced the more lightweight ethos. And this is a new tent which will come out in April, May next year, which is another one along the same theme, I would say.
And what sort of money were we talking about? Did you get any prices for these products as you were going through them?
No, they're kind of a bit tight-lipped in terms of the prices. They said they're not finally decided yet. But Hilleberg is a top-notch manufacturer, top quality, so it would surely be on the upper end of this price scale. Yeah. But it's as you see here, it's a solid double-wall tent, even though it's set up with trekking poles. And with two people, you have still some space inside for some gear. And they label it a 3-person tent, but honestly, knowing Hilleberg, I would also not be afraid to use it in autumn or late spring.
Moving on, I see we've also got some new seamless or unsewn seams from Vaude. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. They came up with a new tent. It's called the Lizard Seamless. Shown here is a 2 to 3-person tent. They also released a 1 to 2-person tent. As you see, this is kind of a more of an Ecto style, a Hilleberg Ecto style tent in terms of the construction. So a well-proven design. What is interesting here is, beside that is very sustainable in terms of the raw materials, where Vaude is really kind of leading. The seams are not sewn anymore and taped; they're actually welded. So it's going to be interesting, if that really withstands the day-to-day usage. Another one which caught my eyes actually was, it's not a new tent, but the one I could really see in the flesh on the show. It's from a big Agnes. It's a Tiger Wall carbon. So they used a fly sheet made out of DCF, Dyneema composite fabrics, formerly known as Cuban fiber. And Andrew Skirker, a very well-known and long-distance hiker, tested that tent, and he said, well, this is one where probably lightweight goes to the extreme, because they have used a too light material from DCF, and it ripped off after 10 usages at one of the packing points. So he does not really recommend. And if you look at it, even though as you know, I really like to go lightweight, I would not probably buy such a tent. Especially, it also costs beyond $800 for one tent.
I was going to say, what the sort of prices we're talking about, it must be astronomical, I would think, with that material.
Yeah, it is. And as I said, it's probably not durable enough. I think they need to go and just choose a different type of DCF fabric. Then it can work, but this is too light. Simple as that. Also, what I looked at in terms of sleeping, Thermarest released a new classic sleeping bag, the Hyperion. Last year they released a few quilts. Also, relatively lightweight. It goes to a maximum temperature of -6 and weighs 577 grams. It doesn't have a full length zipper. Only quarter length, but I would say it's a very solid choice if you want to go lightweight and want to use a classic sleeping bag.
Also, I would have thought actually that's quite going fairly retro, isn't it? That's going back a bit now to previous designs where it really was just a short zip, a basic bag, but obviously really good quality insulation that's inside it.
Exactly. So it goes a little bit back, and as I said, last year they released 2 quills, so it looks like they're kind of moving back also into the more traditional setup, but making it lightweight.
Okay. Okay.
What also changed in terms of some manufacturers, the warmth that a sleeping pad provides is measured in what is called an
The
R
rating.
value.
Yeah, the rating and the R value. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of companies said to some of the manufacturers who didn't use R values so far that they should jump on the bandwagon. They redefine the measurement of R values a bit, so you can see that it increases a little bit for pads next season, which currently already provide R values. But now, as you see here, for example, Big Agnes, who never provided an R value, now provide, which makes it for the end consumer much easier to compare sleeping pads to each other with that value.
Yeah. Comparing apples with apples, as we say in the UK.
Comparing apples with apples, and before that, some companies just said, this is a 3-season pad or whatever, which is not very useful, to be honest. The last item of the big three would be the backpacks. Honestly, nothing new release at the show. The Levity was new last year. Gregory released it, but they concentrate now on their more traditional packs. And also the other manufacturers, didn't release anything new in the lightweight area. So, if you look at a lightweight pack from a major brand, I think the Gregory Levity still the only one available. If you're not moving into the so-called cottage industry or very small companies making backpacks and other equipment, but this is obviously not the focus of the trade fair.
So from your impression, then there actually wasn't much in the way of new backpacks at all. Am I reading that correctly?
No, not well. Refinement of existing lines, but nothing really made what I found interesting. No.
Okay. Well, let's move on to gear then. There's a few interesting toys, I think, in the gear section.
Yeah. Well, what you see here is probably not what you would imagine it could be in the first run. So this is a new gas burner from Primus. It's kind of cylindrical shape, and it folds up like the 3 legs fold up to the sideways. It's an interesting new concept. We will see if it really gives an advantage compared to the, let's say, more traditional gas burners. It's a cylindrical shape. It's available in a titanium and stainless steel version. This titanium version weighs 89 grams, which is okay, I would say. Probably not super light for titanium. We will see, if the pots really stand safe on those 3 legs or not.
So was it particularly packable? Was it a very packable sort of size?
It's packable in terms of, this is kind of a tube shape once it's folded together. So it's not as, usually they're a little bit more bulky. It's long and like a tube if you put the legs together.
So
and
is it
obviously proof.
So is it likely to fit inside a standard 750 or 900 pot?
750. Yes, maybe. You need to check it, because obviously this is longer with the legs raising above the surface of the actual burner head, and not kind of sticking out sideways, what you would normally see in a normal setup.
I'm certainly looking at that closer. I mean, the one thing it seems to be missing compared to most other stoves is any type of basic wind protection.
Well, the burner head itself, as you see, is kind of hidden inside. So the outer ring is above the burner top itself. So you have, for example, as a Soto Windmaster and a stove from Thermarest, Cascade Designs from MSR, which have a similar design. So that should be okay in terms of protection from the wind. I'm more concerned about, as you said, the length overall, and how will that fit inside of the pots, and B, if the surface area really is secure enough to hold your pot if you place it on a more uneven surface.
Sure. Okay. Interesting. Always good.
Okay. Yeah. Well, beside cooking, everybody, a lot of people actually, including myself, love to have a fresh coffee in the morning. The most lightweight solution is one of the instant coffees, but if you want to have a real fresh coffee, Rubytec released a grinder and a stainless steel filter. So the grinder only weighs 205 grams. The stainless steel filter weighs about 54 grams. Looks like a solid construction. So on the next outing, you can bring coffee beans and then use the grinder and the drip to prepare a very nice coffee.
I mean, yeah, seriously, Roman, would you do that for a long trip? Really?
Not for a long trip, but for not everybody does a super long trip. But for those overnighters where you want to bring some luxury items, it might be a good choice.
Okay. Footwear. The footwear looked interesting.
Yeah, footwear. I think 3 Arcteryx entered the market with their own footwear line. Quite unique design back then. They kind of, obviously continue. This is a new Norvan 2 or Norvan LD2 shoe that will release next year. It comes in different colors, and it's full mesh, so you don't have the Gore-Tex lining, and it's 520 grams per pair in a size 43, I think. So that should be a good, let's say, trail shoe if you don't do a lot of rock scrambling or wet grass, because the profile is obviously there. You could see that, but it's not super thick. Super thick lux.
So I was going to say, what's the grip like on the bottom? Because it's got vibrant soles, which are obviously good quality soles, but it didn't look to be particularly aggressive.
No, not aggressive enough, I would say. It's more like for trails, gravel. But if you encounter, let's say, wet grass or something like that, I'm not sure if it would be sticky enough, to be honest.
Okay. But I see, obviously, there's something on the La Sportiva which took your eye.
Yeah, well, at least I've seen it the first time that they kind of borrowed from technology which you usually see in cycling shoes. That boa wheel which tightens the laces has an aggressive thread as well. It's more aimed to trail running instead of hiking or walking. But it was super light. 360 gram per pair for trail running shoes. This is light, and if you utilize a boa wheel, obviously you can grip your foot very tight. One other model from La Sportiva will be the new Jackal, which will come out, and I think that will be the major competitor to the Lone Peak from Ultra, very famous and very well used hiking shoe or trail running shoe in the US by long distance hikers. So
sorry, Roman, it just broke up slightly as you were saying. It would be a good competitor to which model?
To the Lone Peak from Ultra running, which is a very popular model amongst long distance hikers in the US. So I think they kind of made that a kind of a direct competitor. Obviously, they already have trail running shoes, but this is a new one. It's a little bit lighter weight, 600 grams per pair. Looks more like a traditional sneaker, I would say. It also has a 7 millimeters drop, whereas the Ultra running shoes have a 0 drop. So if you're more comfortable or more used to shoes with a slight drop, that might be a good alternative. Will be released also in April, May next year from La Sportiva.
Now, Fjallraven looked like they had a reasonable stand.
They did actually, and they even won a prize at the show for this specific trouser. It's called the Abisko Midsummer pant, and it's very, well, to a certain extent, similar to the Montane Terra pants. I really like. Has a bit more storage capacity, more pockets. Also, the side vents that the Terra pants have. Thankfully, they have it in also different colors. You don't need to buy that light blue, which I don't find personally too appealing. But looks very great. You know, it's a one special brand or version of their G1000 material. It has a slight stretch in it, and it's a mixture of cotton and recycled polyester. So that might be an interesting pant, and as I said, you know, a good competitor to the Terra pants from Montane.
Just a matter of interest, I've got a pair of Fjallraven trousers, and I have to say I'm not particularly super impressed with the cuts. They seem to put strangest panels in areas that I don't find particularly good. For my particular use, and I'm looking at that particular picture. Is the panel at the back side, is that a mesh panel or is that a solid material?
No, it's solid material.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
they only have a mesh panel on the side of the pants, and then you have a mesh behind it, and so you can ventilate the legs a little bit.
So, are you a fan of Fjallraven? Do you think it's I mean, I've always found them to be quite heavy duty clothing for their environment, and certainly they certainly seem to be taking the UK by storm at the moment. The Fjallraven seems to be everywhere. But I was just curious to know if you're a fan of the brand.
As you say, you know, they have a heritage for, you know, quite durable, long-lasting. You know, the classic G1000, you know, it's a cotton which is waxed, and you can again apply the wax, you know, with an iron, and you know, very heavy duty, very not lightweight, but you know, they've come some ways in the previous year. So I would say I would definitely, let's say, try it on, and if the fit works, they could be a valuable choice. And you know, like last year, for example, they also introduced a tight as a hiking pant, you know, which is looking quite unusual, but you know, makes sense for some. So what I want to say is they're kind of moving away from their classical heritage, which continues to be, let's say, the majority of the program, but they invest into new items as well.
Sure. Now, I think this is Montane, am I correct?
Yep, correct. That's they call it the unisex Podium. It's a pull-on and also a pant, lightweight as well. Claims to be waterproof and breathable, of course. They have their own material. It's called Aqua ProLite. And you know, the pant itself comes in at 100 grams in size M.
So would you say that this is their wind shirt material has always been Pertex of the various types of Pertex you can get? So do you get the feeling that these particular products are take over from their traditional wind shirts and wind pants?
I would say yes, at least over the mid run. They could take it over, because that's, as I said, you know, this is their own material. They brand and label.
So sort of equally breathable and wind resistant, obviously, as Pertex, because that's what everybody's going to compare it to.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Equally, you know, I think it's 15,000 hydrostatic heat, so that should be pretty waterproof. But let's see, you know, there are a lot of brands and fabrics that claim to be waterproof and breathable, but we will see how it turns out in reality. Patagonia came up with something interesting. It's called the Elements. It's actually a series of garments aimed at trail runners as a core group, not so much the traditional hiking crowd, but I see there's obviously some overlap. You know, you have here the Airshed Pro pullover, you know, with super lightweight, breathable, wind resistance. You have some very comfortable shirts. The Storm Racer jacket, is interesting for the trader. I'm not sure if everybody would like the features for hiking, because you have 2 zips on both sides, which open up the jacket. Different market, but I think if you look at it from a hiking perspective, I like the shorts, I like the pants, and also I would want to try the airshed pullover. It's meant for activities on the move. Obviously, it's not meant for sitting around at the hut, but it could work double duty from my personal point of view, for hiking and for trail running. But it's specifically designed for trail running in mind.
Okay, excellent. Poles. You obviously got caught by the poles.
The poles. Everybody needs poles. Yeah, Black Diamond came up with let's say a classic pole in terms. It's an alloy pole. 3-section, nothing super interesting, even though I think they are one of the major brands that still uses cork grips, which you don't see that often anymore, which I personally like compared to other materials. But they introduced something that's called the wedge, which is kind of a mounting system on top of the handle. You can see here, which allows you to screw on, for example, a camera, and then you can use double use your trekking pole as a tripod, for example. Yeah.
So can I just ask on that particular fitting then, is that completely removable and it comes off the top of the pole, or is it hidden within the pole and handle?
No, it's completely removable. You can remove it completely, and then you put a cap on the top, and then you have the normal flat surface what you normally have.
Yeah, what I was thinking was, obviously, if it's during cold weather or you've got thick gloves on or whatever, is it easy to manipulate, to actually do that, do you think?
Yeah, it is. I tried it. Now, obviously, I had warm hands, but I think you can still manipulate it even with gloves on. And they're thinking about, in the long run, introduce different accessories which you can then screw on. We will see what they come up with.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you have Komperdell, which release the FXP series, which they say it's a self-deploying pole. You can look it up if you Google it in YouTube. They have a video online which shows how it self-deploys. It's already available. It's self-deploying something which is super breakaway. I personally don't think so. But what I found interesting, they reduced the number of parts quite significantly from 11 to 3 parts. That self-deploying mechanism also works if that kind of how should I say that string or rope which connect the different tubes, for example, breaks. It is still working after that, so you can still use the pole as a pole. And what you can see here in the close-up is where the carbon shafts connect. They now introduced some metal parts. That was usually an area of failure when carbon, comes together with carbon. When you put the poles together, that is prone to breakage. And now they have some metal inserts here.
And I mean, what about weight? Because all the extra parts obviously add something to the actual overall weight. And the other thing with these quick setup poles, or whatever you want to call quick deploy poles, there are a lot of people that obviously have shelters that want to support the shelter, which is usually higher than the 130 the pole goes to. So it's sort of stopping people link 2 sections of poles together, or a pair of poles together to create a taller support.
Yeah. Well, they have actually 2 types. One is a fixed length, but this one, which is also shown here, you can adjust in height. So that goes up to 135 centimeters in height. and the weight is for that as a pair 350 grams. So this is pretty light. I don't think another adjustable pole, carbon pole, weighs that less than that.
Okay. Now this isn't the BioLite as in the wood burning stove, is it?
No, I'm sure it burns that well. But they're expanding their line as well, so they decided to invest in headlamps, as you see here. And the differentiator here, I would say, compared to the competition, is that headband and that whole material there is super soft and super comfy. I mean, I wore the material. It's super soft. It's very nice, and you see the angle where you can adjust the angle of the headlamp. Is kind of embedded into that soft material.
But is it the same company as BioLite, the stove manufacturer?
Yeah, it's the same company. No? Yeah, they now make those cookers and still now do those headlamps as well. They have a whole series. I picked that one up. Which I thought is a nice band. It's called the BioLite 200. So 200 stands for 200 lumens in terms of light output. Has a USB port for recharging the headlamp, which becomes a standard now. I think being released that now that runs with AAA or AA batteries anymore. So they all have their rechargeable built-in battery, and it has a red light mode as well, which I personally found a necessity in headlamps. And as I said, 200 lumens and comes in at 45 grams, which is not too bad, given that this includes that wide and comfy strap as well.
Okay. Is this the same product?
No, this is a headlamp from a company called Nitecore. Nitecore probably has one of the most attractive lights currently available for hiking. It's called the NU25. It's 360 lumen for a very nice light. But this one here weighs even less. It weighs less than the NU25, but also has less lumens. So if you don't need 360, that comes in at 130 lumens. Yeah, and
Okay.
might be interesting for those who say, I don't want to do night hiking or something like that. I only need it for camp, and that will be sufficient and lighter as well.
Sure. And did you find that most of the most of the lighting brands were now all going over to rechargeable USB style lamps?
Yeah. All the new lamps I've seen, rechargeable USB, micro USB, so that didn't adopt the USB-C port right now. Let's see. I guess that will be in the future.
Okay. I'm noticing this is another area where there seems to be more people getting involved in this section as well. These lifesaver come emergency beacons.
Yeah, that's a beacon from a probably not so well-known company right now. It's called ProteGear. It's called the A-Life. It's a competitor to the InReach Mini, which has been released last year. I think one of the selling points here, they use a lot of, let's say, satellite technology, which ensures that you really get true 100% global coverage. So in comparison to the InReach, they also offer a much more flexible data plan. So you can buy days or weeks and not months or a whole year. So that might be interesting. It's slightly heavier than the InReach Mini, and slightly larger as well. But it has more functionalities, and as you can see here, probably their booth was the most innovative and fun booth I've seen on the show, with that rescue model here, and it was in the Hall of Innovation, which also is different to Friedrichshafen, where they kind of gave newcomers the possibility to show their new gear, and not only the established brands. And then, the umbrella. I think an umbrella for hiking obviously has its place, and a German company called Gobel makes, I think, all of the existing hiking umbrellas. A lot of, let's say, companies rebrand it, but they actually manufacture it. And they came up with a new model. It's called the Swing Backpack, where the back canopy actually extends a little bit to the backside, so it also covers your pack as well, and the rain does not drip on the pack as usual. So it's quite an ingenious way of folding and unfolding the umbrella, I found.
So I
Also,
thought that peak was to go over your head, not over the pack. That goes at the back then, does it?
well, if you want some extra shade, if you wear just a trucker hat or something like that, maybe that can work as well. But the intent is to extend on your back beyond your backpack, and you can have that, in that normal, let's say, in various colors in the normal material, but you also have the chrome material, which is a silver coating on the outside, which reflects the sun back. And especially if you walk in a very hot environment, that might be a good source for shade and not only for protection from the rain.
Can I ask you a question? Do you find in your outdoor experience then in Germany and the areas that you walk in that many people use umbrellas? Or I have the impression that I have is that they're predominantly used in hotter climates such as Spain, people doing the Camino or over in the US.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be my impression as well. It depends. I mean, obviously, usage of an umbrella stops where there's some heavy wind. And that might prevent people, from using them. Let's say in something like the Alps, where you usually, when you go up higher, you have a certain breeze blowing. But the double duty, if you don't mind, you look a little bit special. When you wear a chromed umbrella, can be a good option because it really lowers the temperature. If you walk in your shade, if you take your shade with you, and that construction here I found very interesting.
Well, I've certainly spoken to Gobel myself many times, and fascinated that obviously the company is based in Germany and is probably making most of the outdoor umbrellas around the world. But I have yet to see anybody in Europe really using the umbrellas as a hiking umbrella. Although I've spoken to many people that say they're a good idea and obviously use them, particularly in the US, doing something like one of the big CDT trails.
Yeah. As I said, you have your shade with you on top of the rain protection, and a lot of people also use it if they, for example, to cover the entrance of their tents. When it's windy and rain tend to blow into, they just open up their umbrella and put it inside of the entrance of the tent.
Well, you came away from the show, were you sort of excited or inspired as you had been in the past at Friedrichshafen? I'm sorry I didn't really make it this year, but I got the feeling it was probably, in some realistic expense, a bit more expensive to actually attend it as well.
Yeah. Well, for sure, it was a bit more expensive. I mean, as I said at the beginning, you could see it at the size of the booths of the various companies. Companies who have super large ones in Friedrichshafen now have, let's say, normal size anymore for various reasons returned now that it's taking place in Munich. And in terms of, this is a show, it's a B2B show, right? It's a business to business show. So it's not aimed at the end consumer, it's aimed, that the major brands connect to their dealers and they can order, the gear for the next season. So that's the main aim. And obviously, then you have some media people around that kind of, spread the word what will be coming out. But it's not an end consumer show, and it's also not a show where, let's say, cottage manufacturers who tend to build lightweight equipment have a place there, right? So it's the main companies, and as I said at the beginning, it seems to be that lightweight is not seen by those companies anymore as a differentiator. In previous years, you always had companies coming up. This is the lightest X. This is the lightest Y. You haven't seen that advertised at this year's show. And and what I've seen, you have seen last year the Uberlite pad from Thermarest, and the quilt, the levity pack I mentioned from Osprey. So no major releases of really lightweight, with the exception of some of the products I've talked about in the show. But it's more evolution than revolution, I would say.
I was going to say that's the feeling I had, that it is more a show that things have evolved slightly and materials have become a little bit more eco-sensitive. But what is this poor little robot doing?
Yeah, well, the aim of the robot was actually to help you finding your way. You have that iPad type of or tablet kind of thing which you could press, and then that robot would awake, and you can ask the robot, whatever booth you want to visit, and it would show the directions. Not sure if that is the future of the industry. Hopefully not. But it's interesting because there's always that discussion. Is such a fair, nowadays the right ground for connecting people and demonstrating the new equipment? Because what major brands tend to do now is they reach out directly, and then they have their own little fairs where they can then present their new gear to the dealers that lists them, and then they order directly. So from that angle, they don't need the show anymore. The question is, is that networking aspect interesting enough for companies to visit? Right?
Well, certainly technology is moving forward now, and obviously we're using technology to discuss the subject and share it across the world with people. I'm sure the brands themselves will grasp the idea that it's probably cheaper to employ this type of technology, for example, to shed the story amongst their dealers and so on.
Yeah, this is one thing, and you have two on top. You have two major trade shows. You have obviously this one here. This is aimed for the European market. And then you have one, it's called the outdoor retailer show in the USA. And that took place I think 2 weeks before, or even 1 week before this fair started. So all the major brands with a footprint, in the US, which tend to be a lot, release their new items at the OR show in Denver. So this was not news then anymore for Europe. So we will see. Do we need two shows? Maybe not. Maybe one show is enough. I don't know.
Well, it's certainly
will be interesting to see what the future will bring.
It's certainly an expensive hobby to cover these shows and actually visit them. So it's interesting to see where it's all going. And let's face it, to be honest, everybody's business is changing quite significantly at the moment with all the various political things that are going on, as much as the cost implications. Anyway, Roman, I just want to say thanks very much indeed once again for covering the show for us. It's been a fascinating evening chatting to you once again and finding out what's going on with the makers and shakers in the outdoors industry. And I trust that we'll meet up once again, hopefully perhaps at next year's show, and we'll try and cover it between us.
We surely will. I'm such a gear nerd, I can't miss a show.
Okay, Rowan. All the best. Many thanks.
Thank you.